Hi, and welcome to If These Heels Could Talk. I'm JoyGenea with Solutions by JoyGenea, your
And I'm
co-host.
and I'm Michelle with Bad Cat Digital. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for to Gail Ivers, who is joining us from the St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce. So excited to have you on, Gail. Gail is the second winner of our Brilliant Leader Soul Award, and we are so excited that she can join us today on the week of her retirement. Super excited. So Gail is the vice president currently of the St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce, just for a few more days. And she has worked at the chamber for 34 years in communications, marketing, and operations. She's a founding editor of Business Central magazine and also helped establish Waite Park Chamber. Gail is an avid gardener, mostly flower gardening, and enjoys travel as well. She's been to 6 continents and over 40 countries, which is insane. And she has joined us today. This is the most amazing guest. Thank you so much, Gail, for joining us. And we like to start with the kind of segue question, the easy one. We get the easy one out of the way. What is your favorite type of shoe?
My favorite type of shoe is the comfortable shoe. I wear Reebok tennis shoes whenever I can.
You know, one of my favorite things about these interviews is that we get different answers from different generations of women, because the women that we have talked to in their 20s do not have that answer. But most of the women that we have talked to that are over, I would say, what do you think, JoyGenea, 50, 55? Everybody's
Yes.
like, I go for comfort. It's like we learned somehow along the way that we needed to ditch the heels for something more comfortable. Well, thank you again, Gail, for joining us. And I think JoyGenea is going to kick off the questions that we have for you.
I am. And I have to say, Gail, I think I've been at a few chamber events and seen you darting around in your Reeboks, helping out. And so I'm like, when you said it, I'm like, I remember seeing her like all dressed up and then noticing matching, like comfortable Reebok shoes because she's moving around. And wise woman, great thing. And congratulations also on joining the BLS award category. We're very excited to build that. So my first question, I'm curious, how did you get involved in the chamber to begin with?
It's not an exciting story. I was unemployed. There was an ad in the newspaper for a communications and marketing director, and I applied. I think that one of the things that they had at the time was a radio program that was pre-recorded. So we have a radio program now, but it's a live interview. Back then, Tom Moore, the chamber president, just went to the radio station and recorded 5 days worth of programming. It was on every day. I had radio background. That was my education. And so I think that when it came down to like there were 3 people and we were all equal, I was the only one who knew how to write for radio.
That's cool. You never know what it is that gets you a job, right?
No. And the thing I didn't know anything about the chamber. My dad had been a member of the Chamber of Commerce when I was growing up. That's as much as I knew about the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the questions they asked me was, how do you feel about working with volunteers? And I thought, why did they ask that? And so I said, well, it has its ups and downs.
She was really going for the job.
Well, that's interesting because I know you, Gail, through volunteering at the chamber, and the committees that you staff, the volunteer committees that you staff, and that's how we've worked together. And so I think you're an excellent volunteer coordinator. You sit back and kind of guide quietly through the
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it 34 years ago.
Wow.
Now she could probably write a book.
Yeah. What a transition. So what of
in that better volunteer, I'll tell you that.
In the 34 years, then what has been really challenging and what's been really rewarding? I guess we could say the good one as well, but the one everybody will want to hear is the dirt. What's been really challenging about being at the chamber?
Actually, the answer is the same. It's the volunteers. I have met so many amazing people who care so much about the Chamber of Commerce, about business, about helping other businesses succeed. who respect the work that they are doing and want other people to have that same level of enthusiasm and knowledge about business, and work so hard and commit to all sorts of things that they follow through. And it's just been inspiring and exciting to work with that. And I've been with volunteers who promise the moon and you never see them again. Or they show up at meetings and don't do a thing. Or, whatever. They do it, but they don't do it the way they said they would. It's the good and the yin and yang of volunteering. Isn't that often the case? Like what you like the best or what you're best at is also what you're kind of your big downfall. But certainly I think volunteers would be at the top of both the challenge and the rewarding list. And then for me, the other thing in terms of rewards would be working on Business Central magazine, starting that from an idea and turning it into a 58, 60-page magazine every 2 months. It was way more than I thought it was going to be when I started. But I'd wanted to write in a magazine since I was 10 years old, since I was in 10th grade. From the time I was in 10th grade, I wanted to be part of a magazine. So that chance to do that for 23 years has been incredible.
Super cool. Super cool.
It's interesting to see how communication is very much a part of your DNA. You went into radio, you just mentioned about, wanting to put together a magazine. That is a definite, a need to communicate, a want to communicate and connect and share. It'll be fun to watch how you use that in the next chapters of your life. That'll be cool.
I can tell you right now, writing newsletters is not at the top of my list.
Right. There's many things you get to retire from in this. that is one. But you've checked the box, right? Like you said, you wanted to do it, you did it, and now you get to move on. What are some of the recent, because you're at the forefront of business right now, and the last few years have been extra interesting, I'll put it that way. What are some of the recent concerns you're seeing coming up for small business owners in our community? And probably in lots of small communities.
Well, I think not even in small communities everywhere, I think the problems are pretty similar. Workforce is a really tough one, and it's inhibiting growth for businesses. Dealing with inflation right now because it's resulting in both wage inflation, but also in input inflation. And then supply chain. I'm looking for trying to find goods and services. People are having a terrible time, and just listen to what happens with the airplanes and flights. They're just being canceled constantly. But just recently I was talking with somebody and they weren't able to do something because they had ordered it and they were still waiting for stuff to arrive and they didn't know when it was going to get there. So figuring out the supply chain, I think, has potential to be sort of a business changing experience, really getting away from that just-in-time production for manufacturing and starting to hold more supplies in-house. It raises their costs, but it's raising their costs to not have anything. Mm-hmm. And businesses are really challenged by this whole environment now.
So when you talk about that, are you seeing any kind of creative solutions coming out of different business owners for these kinds of challenges?
Not yet. I think that this is new, right? Like supply chain problems during the worst of COVID, there wasn't any because everybody just stopped.
Sure.
And so I think that this is still so new that there aren't lots of creative solutions popping up. Mostly what I'm seeing is stockpiling. But it works, right?
Yeah, that seems to be a challenge. Yeah.
One of the pluses or silver linings or Gina I'm seeing on some of that is the communication and expectation with customers that things can be done instantly. I had a client recently who was having some remodeling done and she's just like, well, I don't understand why it's taking so long. And I'm like, I'm sorry, they're not communicating with you. Maybe at a level they should. Let me break it down for you. They can't get this, obviously. It's now going to delay your project. I said, either take a breath or lose your mind, but pick pick the lane. And it was really funny. And she was like, because I said, losing your mind, I said, oh, you'll get it done. But I said, it's not going to be pretty and you are not going to be happy. But I said, they'll get it done on your schedule. But I'm like, so pick your lane. And she's like, well, I'd like it done well and nicely. And I said, then let go. I said, this is everybody. We're all experiencing this. But it was just, it hadn't affected her yet. She'd been able to go to the grocery store and get what she needed when she needed it, those types of things. And I have to say, I think business owners, what you're talking about, Gail, totally relating to it. Like business owners are on the front line of that. It's not here, the supply chain thing. And I'm finding the need that to communicate that further downhill. Like, let me talk about the last 6 months. Like, here's how this has kind of gone. So I'm projecting your project's going to, be similar and take longer. And
yeah. I think the area of those challenges that I hear the most creative problem solving and brainstorming in is in workforce. The other people, that I talk to that own businesses are trying all kinds of different things to retain their client or their workforce and attract new employees. And they're coming up with solutions that are not all monetary based. They're coming up with, being flexible in terms of workplace location. They're coming up with some different kinds of benefits programs that are not really costing that much, but are kind of lifestyle benefits. Are you seeing any creativity in that vein, Gail?
Well, again, I'm not sure how creative it is. Certainly the ones that you've talked about, particularly the flexibility from work and also just the work environment in general. In our office, somebody was saying, we need to have puppies in the office. I'm going to be curious to watch how things turn out with remote work.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Me too. I don't know that it's super sustainable.
I agree. I think businesses are going to find that the culture is going to shift, or they're going to have more and more turnover because people are going to have so much flexibility, and how you keep that cohesion of a group. I've always heard people talking about culture at work all my life, and I've never really thought about it until all of this happened. And even in our own organization, which is very small, we, for the first 2 weeks, were kind of just at home doing our own thing. And the staff that I work with actually reached out to me and said, can we please start having meetings again? Like, we need to be together, even if it's on Zoom. I was like, oh, good news. I thought you guys hated those meetings.
No, I experienced something similar. Yeah, the staff wanted to come back. I gave people the option individually, and I only had 1 out of 12 decide to stay home for a significantly longer amount of time than was required. And even now, during, every time somebody goes on vacation, we just had somebody get married and come back and then be on quarantine. Like, it's super disruptive to have a person gone for a time frame. The kind of spontaneous collaboration that happens just doesn't happen. It has to be so planned and so structured. Yeah.
And the other thing I found is everything takes longer. Like when we were home, you had to track somebody down. They had to be available. Right. Then you could talk it out. Then you hang up the phone and you get off the Zoom and it's like, oh, but I forgot to ask. Whereas now, you go into the office, you bop in, you ask your 2 questions, you leave, you go, oh, wait, I got to go ask this one too. And you're done in 5 minutes rather than 25 minutes.
Right.
That's kind of that spontaneity as well gets lost. Yeah.
Where I do see it working well is in much, much, much larger organizations where people and teams are pretty siloed. They have very clearly defined job functions and very clearly defined tasks and deliverables. And those tasks and deliverables require long periods of concentration, but don't necessarily require a lot of team input. And when that's the case, I think it works really, really well. But that's really not the case all over the place. I think if I was running, say, a call center, that would be easy to have people working from home. That's not anything that I would have to have people coming to a single location for. When the single location is only needed because it's about control, then it just doesn't need to happen. But when it's about collaboration, I've been noticing that that more and more people are getting restless with working from home and wanting to come back.
I do know somebody who does computer programming, and he works for a company where everybody is remote, but they have certain structure. So it's like they always have a meeting at this time, and everyone is expected to be there. And then they always have another one with a different group at this time, and then they always have a happy hour every week, and it's not optional. This is part of what we do, and they do fun things like their planned activity, but it's not talking business. It's fun, or if it's business, it's like the bloopers of the week kind of business.
It's about being intentional.
Very intentional about how they create that environment that makes all those people feel connected.
Awesome. Well, as we look into that and you're kind of seeing all of these challenges, now that you're retiring, what do you look forward to leaving behind? And in reality, though, what are you looking forward to in retirement?
Well, I'm looking forward to removing 6 a.m. from my alarm clock.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Not a morning person, saying goodbye to 6 a.m. I'm good with that. Sleeping right through it.
Isn't that the best time to garden, though?
No, that's the best time to sleep.
Oh, okay. My mom always does her gardening like before 8 a.m. She says it's the best time to garden because the ground is still soft and wet and whatever.
Yeah, but then you're all wet too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm actually looking forward to being able to garden for 16 hours a week and not have to do it all in 2 days. I asked my aunt one time about being retired, and she's like, "Yeah, well, it's just like not being retired, except you get to do your stuff in 7 days rather than in 2. You know, personal." Like, good point.
That's nice.
That's nicely put. You're a wise woman there.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed is that when I talk to somebody who retires, they're always like, I'm so busy. And I'm sitting here going, seriously? So are you excited to be retired busy?
I think one of the things that happens is you can no longer say I can't do that because I have to work. So you need to get good at saying, no, I'm not interested, or I'm a real believer that busy people stay busy, and I'm a busy person.
Yeah,
I'm busy on the weekends. I'm busy at night. I'm a joiner, so I'm not really concerned about having things to do. But I actually do. In fact, I've already looked into it. So I'm going to move into the ranks of being the volunteer rather than being the volunteer manager. I've talked with the Statistics Museum about a project that we have a mutual interest in. That kind of goes back to the whole communication thing that you were talking about, JoyGenea. Chamber member who had done so much video for us 2 years ago now, or a year ago, I guess. And he had wanted to donate all this video, thousands of hours, to the Spring History Museum, and I knew that. So I called them and asked them if they were interested in having me curate it. And wow. I've never been so welcomed in my life.
What a cool idea.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. I had thought at the time when I was talking to the individual who passed away, I thought at that time, if I was retired, this is a project I would do with you, because he would have liked that and it would have been kind of a gift to him. So now it's a posthumous gift, but I still think that it'll be kind of a fun, and there's no pressure, right? Like I don't have to deal with a deadline. I can just go in. And it'll be social for me and get me out of the house on a regular basis. And so I'm really looking forward to getting that started. I am very interested in Quiet Oaks. I think that organization is a gift to this community. Mm-hmm. I haven't figured out how I fit there yet, but I really want to do something to make sure that that's sustainable. It's just such an important organization.
They need communications help.
What?
They need communications help.
Yeah, not doing newsletters.
That's so cool.
I was at the Sauk Rapids Chamber meeting last week, and I happened to sit next to the volunteer coordinator from Good Shepherd, and she just casually slid her business card over to me on the table. So I said, well, it's not going to happen right away, but it'll be on my list of things to look at. And travel. I really want to get back into travel.
Yeah. Where are you thinking about going next? Where are you thinking about going next?
So the immediate future is a trip to Canada, to Thunder Bay, because I've never been there. Nancy and I did the Giants of Minnesota and ice cream tour last year. So this is the Giants of Minnesota and ice cream tour, the sequel. We're going to stop and look at all the big giant roadside attractions.
Mm-hmm.
Deerwood has a deer, and Thunder Bay has a mountain called Thunder Mountain, or Giant Mountain. It's called Giant Mountain. How can you go wrong? And eat ice cream, because every day is a good day to eat ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And in October, she and I are going to go to the Galapagos Islands.
Wow.
It's been on a bucket list for a really long time. And then next June, I'm looking at going to Ireland with some friends.
Wonderful. So
Oh.
of the continents, which one have you missed? Antarctica?
No, I've been to Antarctica. I haven't been to Australia.
Ah, okay. So when's that coming?
Well, it's a really long way to go. And the people I know who travel either aren't interested or have been there.
Oh,
I kind of wrap my head around going on my own, because I will go to Australia.
yeah.
It's just of all the places that I've been, it's the least changing, right? Like Africa is changing every day. Antarctica is pristine, and yet they just found microscopic plastic particles. So it's changing all the time. And with global warming, it's changing. So I've got to try to get to places before they have turned into the U.S.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Australia is something I really want to go, but it doesn't have to be first.
Gotcha.
I think she's going to be okay in retirement, Gail. I was a little worried you might get bored, or I don't know, not quite have a direction, but I'm glad to hear this. I'm glad.
I think Gail's going to be just fine.
I think Gail's going to be just fine. I'm going to enjoy bumping into you a year from now.
Yes.
Like, I enjoy bumping into you now, but a year from now, there will be a different breath and yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Gail. We very much appreciate it. Super excited to hear about your plans for the future and your thoughts about your time with the Chamber and the amazing career that you've had in the Central Minnesota business community. Thank you very much for all you've given me as a new business 6 years ago. And a new Chamber member. And I very much appreciate that personally, but also thank you so much for what you've done for the business community as a whole. Really appreciate it.
Very nice of you, Michelle.
I echo completely.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a real treat for me. I've never been on a podcast before.
Well, thank you so much. Check that off the bucket list. And that's it for us. And that's it for us at If These Heels Could Talk. Thank you so much for listening this week. Thank you to Gail for being our guest. And thank you for listening in. We hope that you have gleaned some insights, learned some things, and we will talk to you next week.